School's no longer in session at the number 5 district school here in Underhill. It's now a landmark to a time when one-room schoolhouses were the standard in Vermont. Whether you're an old school or new school Vermonter, education is always top of mind. Today, we're going back to school to learn about a group of dedicated educators from the Northeast Kingdom who work together to make sure education works for all. Good afternoon, and thank you for stopping by Across the Fence. I'm Keith Silva, in for Amy Finley. Be it in the halls of the State House or the dairy aisle in your local market, no topic fires folks up more than education. From funding to curriculum, everyone has questions, opinions, concerns, and this being summer, hot takes about what should be done, what isn't being done, and of course, how to fund it. Our guest today is someone who's been involved in these and many other conversations around education for the past 50 years in Vermont. John Castle serves as the Executive Director of Vermont Rural Education Collaborative, which covers schools, supervisory unions, and districts in the Northeast Kingdom. John, welcome to Across the Fence.
Thanks for having me, Keith. Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here. We're glad to talk about this. We're not going to solve any school funding today, but we have a great topic in the Vermont Rural Education Collaborative to talk about. So start us off. What is the Vermont Rural Education Collaborative?
Yep. We're a true collaborative. We're made up of our member school districts. So there are 8 different supervisory unions or school districts in the Northeast Kingdom. That comprises 48 schools. I think when I last checked, it depends on some communities if they count schools as 1 or 2 schools, right, that kind of thing. But we provide additional capacity for our schools by providing professional development in the region. We provide support for workforce initiatives. That's something that's been a very successful collaborative effort in recent years, and we have a range of youth programs where we provide youth opportunities for visiting college campuses in Vermont, some outdoor experiential learning programs for students in the summer, and we also provide an opportunity for students to grow through certain leadership opportunities.
And this is independent of the schools. You're not, connected to the schools, but not connected to the schools.
Yeah, I mean, so the resources for these programs are predominantly come through foundations, okay, and so we work in partnership with our schools, right. And so their feedback and their input is really important, but yes, we are working independently in that role. Okay.
Rural in a state like Vermont is kind of a relative word. What is the difference between a rural education and an urban one?
That's a great thing to try to ponder, right? And it's all, you're right, it is relative. And so, a school in Chittenden County or in even Addison County that may not be perceived as rural is by certain federal definitions, yes, rural, yes, but that could be very different than a school in the Northeast Kingdom, for instance, that could be actually considered remote rural.
Remote rural.
Yeah, so even those variations. But I would say the differences are, many of our rural schools are some of our smallest schools. Mm-hmm. And in those small communities, a rural school is often the largest employer, right, mm-hmm, in a community. It truly is the hub of that community. So I think the life of a community and the school is very much more integrated in a small rural school.
Right. When again, you were talking relative. If the school is the largest employer in town, and that's where the most people in the community gather on, yep, a regular basis, it's going to have that hub, and the impact is going to be that much greater simply because the population is that much smaller.
Absolutely.
And it's why it's true in Vermont, because Vermont population is smaller. I was looking up some technical, we are talking about, definitions. So technically, the USD standards, no city in Vermont has a population exceeding 50,000, which is what the USDA, yep, calls urban. So Burlington has 45, and that's the biggest, if not the biggest. So
yeah, and depending on which definitions are used, Vermont has the highest percentage of rural schools, or one of the highest percentages, right, of rural schools in the country.
Right, more so than those big states out west, where there's a lot more spaces, wide open spaces, out there. Collaborative is in your name, so talk about the work you do with partners on the statewide level, someone like the Vermont Department of Education.
Yep, so even though our footprint really is the Northeast Kingdom, so that really spans from Canaan all the way down to Bradford, yep, we have had a lot of work with other state agencies and organizations. So again, I mentioned earlier the work we've done on workforce development. It was identified by the Agency of Education that we were a region that was really struggling, right, to find teachers, especially that post-pandemic period.
Sure.
And so we worked very closely with the Agency of Education, the Department of Labor, the Vermont National Education Association, the teachers union in the state, to develop a teacher residency program, or a registered apprenticeship program. And so that registered apprenticeship program really is a pathway to become a licensed teacher where they're not necessarily going to a traditional educational prep program on a college campus. So that was an area, and we also work very closely with the University of Vermont in a number of initiatives.
We're going to talk about those in a second. Have you had some success? Have you had people, develop through those pathways and teachers stay, that workforce development?
Yes, absolutely. So the pilot was last year, and I think we had 26 individuals that were a part of that first pilot program. This year, the agency has expanded it, so it's not only contained within the Northeast Kingdom, there's a few other school districts that are involved. And so we have people that are becoming licensed teachers and meeting the needs in those rural communities that I think, for various reasons, the struggle to find licensed teachers is just a little harder. We're a little further away, pay rates are a little lower, and so finding these ways to grow our own, right, to have people that live in our own communities
Right.
so that they have a pathway to licensure.
That's great. What about outside the state? Do you collaborate nationally? I mean, when I was on your website and reading everything, I was like, wow, man, they should, copy this and put it everywhere else.
We do. I mean, we are one of 12 other collaboratives nationally, and there's a consortium of those collaboratives, so we
Okay.
work with them, and that's just a great opportunity to share ideas and practices. We have been a part of helping to establish a National Rural Education Association, yet another sort of organizational level in Vermont. So even though our footprint is only the Northeast Kingdom, that would be more statewide. So we would be an affiliate that would be connected to that national organization. And just being able to network with other organizations out there about, what are you doing about rural employment for teachers and rural opportunities for students has really been a great I think, resource for us to tap into.
Is that important to you? I mean, I think one of the things in New England that we get very, community can be a good thing. It can also be a thing that, where the borders are, good fences make good neighbors sort of thing. So is that really important to you, is reaching out to those other people? And what do you get from that? I mean, we're in the Northeast Kingdom. You don't have the same issues we do.
Well, I think surprisingly, many rural communities do have common issues, right? So I'm currently a part of a community of practice in New England that's coordinated by the Nellie Mae Foundation. And so what I'm finding out is some of the challenges and opportunities that we have in Northeast Kingdom of Vermont are shared by our other school systems in New Hampshire or in Maine, right? And so learning from them, what practices have worked well for you and sharing our ideas. So I do think those larger networks really are important. And I think some of it also does come down to a lens into public policy. So how is your state formulating things like education finance or governance issues? And so some of our role is an advocacy role, and so I think learning from other systems out there has been important.
You mentioned a little bit earlier the University of Vermont. How do you partner with the University of Vermont, specifically the College of Education and Social Services?
Yeah, so I'm on their Educational Leadership Advisory Board.
It's a good way to partner.
And so it's been great to have a connection with that. And I think the value there is this idea of promoting opportunities for people in the field, so other administrators to pursue their educational doctorate, right? And so you have people that are coming from the Northeast Kingdom that I think sometimes they feel like Burlington's a little far away, so being a conduit for that. And so we have some folks that are entering that program this year, and as part of helping to recruit some of those folks. I think it's also getting the university to be thinking about the field.
Right.
And being a conduit that way, so that the university is thinking about research in other areas of the field and not everything is around Chittenden County. So I think that's been a value in that role. As I think I mentioned earlier, we're also working closely with some folks at the university around establishing an affiliate of the National Rural Education Association. So there's a partnership. And then the third thing is the Catamount Community Schools Cooperative, right? So that is a part of the university that's doing research around recipients in the state of community schools funding, right? So this is a whole opportunity to integrate services into schools and expand learning opportunities. And so having this research practice partnership, I think, has been very helpful there because it helps schools understand the value of these programs as well as being able to broadcast that more widely.
UVM has a land grant mission and should be reaching out to Vermonters and vice versa. So that's very good. The Northeast Kingdom is lovely, especially Holland, around where you're from. One of the things that we always talk about with smaller school districts and with any school district is capacity. So how do your districts share? What's the actual, you talked about, capacity, additional, what is that?
Yeah, so I think one of the areas that we do that first and foremost is sharing opportunities for professional development. So sometimes individual school districts may have a hard time getting a large enough cohort to participate in a course, for instance, or a workshop. And so when we share with other school districts, that helps us bring in outside opportunities to the region that otherwise might not be really accessible. So I think that's an area. We do provide some additional funding. So we have a series of mini grants. One of our signature programs is our place-based learning student-led mini grants, which are really to be initiated by students. They develop the grants, pitch the grants, and we'll be hosting our annual celebration of learning coming up here at the end of the month, where they present what they did in their projects, and so they receive funding to support those grants. We have what we call inclusive schools grants, which are to support diversity, equity, and inclusion practices in schools. We have service learning grants to do projects within communities. And then most recently, we started a teacher innovation grant for teachers that want to sort of expand new practices around, say, place-based learning or project-based learning. So we've been able to fund those kinds of things. So those are ways that we provide additional capacity to our region.
How important is it for someone in Holland, Vermont, or Morgan, Vermont, a student, a young person, to know that the University of Vermont is a part, that they are connected to that through organizations like yourself or their own school?
Yeah, I think certainly knowing the opportunities that exist. So for instance, we have what we call our AIM program, Aspire, Imagine, Motivate, and that's getting students on college campuses. So UVM, St. Michael's, Middlebury, the Vermont college system, we're getting students out there, and so getting them to understand that there are those kinds of opportunities such as the university, and having those partnerships I think are really valuable.
Well, John, I'm very excited about what your organization does. I wish you the best of luck. And to learn more about the Vermont Rural Education Collaborative, visit their website listed on the screen. There you'll find information about the topics we discussed, and to meet you, and you're welcome back to Across the Fence anytime.
Great, thank you very much, Keith.
My thanks to the team behind the scenes here at WCX, who are always happy to school me on any number of topics. I'm Keith Silva. This is Across the Fence. Thanks for being part of our family.